when you were asked about it, when you were in the government, you would sort of highlight the fact that I think the number was about 80% of Canadians were kind of getting more back than they were paying on the carbon tax. So if you get rid of the consumer-facing carbon tax, are you not taking money out of people's pockets in a time when there's an affordability crisis?
After her chaotic leadership campaign launch over the weekend, Chrystia Freeland has started to make the rounds on the mainstream media talk shows, including CP24. We're expected to hear her speaking in her condescending manner to Canadians, but the one thing that we didn't expect is for her to all but admit that she knew full well that the carbon tax was a total scam.
Let's take a look.
On Sunday, Ms. Freeland officially launched her campaign to be the next leader, and this morning she's joining us live here in studio to talk more about why she wants the job. Ms. Freeland, good to see you this morning. Thanks for the time.
Good to be with you, Nick.
Okay, so let's talk about, this is the big day, Inauguration Day. I realize it's day 2 of your campaign, but I think we have to talk about kind of the elephant in the room being the Donald Trump return of the President Trump here. Your thoughts on not only Donald Trump being back in office, but the threats of financial annexation to Canada, 51st state. If you become Liberal leader and therefore Prime Minister, how would you tackle Trump?
We need to be strong, smart, and united. The key thing is not to be scared. What Trump wants is chaos. What he wants is uncertainty. And as a country, we have to say, you know what? We can stand up for ourselves. I love what Bill had to say about the weather. He said, we love Canada, we can get through this, and we're tough. Mm-hmm. I think that is who we are, really, in our core, and it's that attitude that we have to bring to this truly challenging situation.
Mm-hmm. And we're off to the condescending races.
Well, I just find it so interesting that she says, it's this attitude of that we're Canada and we're tough that we need to bring to this. You guys have been trying to demoralize and divide Canadians the past 9 years, and all of a sudden you want to turn it around and go, Canada, rah, rah, rah. Come on.
Well, and she even says, what Trump, feeds off of? He feeds off of chaos and he feeds off of uncertainty. Well, gee, what is the product of this Liberal government after 10 years? The country is in complete chaos from a financial and criminal perspective and an ideological perspective. As Tanya said, you've divided Canadians in virtually every single way that you can think of. And now you're turning around and looking at the team saying, okay, everybody, I know I crapped on you for the last 10 years, but let's all huddle in and work together. Everyone's looking at you like, what is wrong with you?
I get it that she's trying to be the new coach, but she was part of the team that was demoralizing us all for the past 9 years. She can't just come in and be like the new peppy, positive coach. Yeah, we're going to win, you guys. Like, it just doesn't work. And
we need to stop talking with our hands, Chrystia, because it's very condescending.
I do it too. I do admit, but I don't do it that badly.
No.
And it is challenging, and you have experience on this. I remember, I think one of the last times I saw you was in Washington, going back and forth during the sort of free trade sort of renegotiation here. With your experience there, what did you learn about Donald Trump, and what would you therefore bring to the table this time around?
I learned 2 things. One, he does not like weakness. For him, weakness is an invitation to just push harder and ask for more. The second thing I learned is if you're smart, if you have a plan, and if the fundamentals are actually good, which is what Canada offers the U.S., you can get a great deal. We did it before, we can do it again.
So he doesn't like weakness. I think what you mean to say is he is very good at smelling weakness, which is why he's pushing so hard against Trudeau, and he's pushed so hard against the Liberals, and he's pushed so hard against Canada and Canada's media. This is what we see over and over and over again. He's just poking and twisting the knife, and you're eating it up. You are completely eating it up, and the mainstream media is responsible for a lot of this crap too, because they're just freaking out over all of these trolling posts that he's putting up there. Does Donald Trump want to annex Canada? No. What he wants to do is he wants to get a good deal. And
So here's a question then. Sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask this. Who do you think is going to be better poised to handle this Trump situation? Carney, who's never dealt with Trump before.
well, he has, but not in this
Not
capacity.
in this capacity. Or Freeland, who has, but did she really do a good job?
Well, this is the thing. I don't think you want somebody. I don't think you want anybody that is on the other side of Trump that is obviously in a weakened position and doesn't have the confidence of the people, and that he doesn't like. Sure, you're going to be in a lot of scenarios where you're negotiating with somebody that you don't like them, and sometimes you make it to the end really hating them. That just sometimes happens in negotiations. But I don't want somebody who's going to be emotional, and that's Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland.
On the other hand, though, like, Carney doesn't have experience with this. I mean, I think the obvious answer is that Pierre Poilievre is going to be the best poised to deal with Trump, but that might not happen until May. So we're stuck with either Carney or Freeland after March 9th.
Well, potentially, but I'm wondering if Donald Trump has been listening to Kevin O'Leary and Daniel Smith, because one of the things that Kevin O'Leary has said that he was going to ask Trump to do is wait until after the Canadian election. Just give us some time. You're going to have a new government come in. They're actually going to be able to speak on Canada's behalf. Then you can actually get a good deal. And it's going to be a deal with a like-minded conservative government in Canada. What do we want to do in Canada? We want to prosper, free enterprise. We want to unleash business. We want to actually use our resources wisely. We want to respect the environment, but we don't want to go full climate fanaticism.
Right. I mean, I think there's a difference between, let's not dump sewage in lakes and whatever, this garbage the Liberals have been trying to do the past 9 years.
Yeah, it's a far cry, right? And whether the Liberals want to admit it or not, the Conservatives actually have a decent plan to help the environment on a global scale by reducing coal emissions, by encouraging countries to use our LNG, because that is better for the environment.
Well, I thought there was no business case.
Yeah, apparently none at all. But remember, like decades ago, there was just like this big push. Well, get on natural gas. It's much better for the environment. Natural gas. And then everyone said, okay, fine. And now all you hear the Liberals saying is, it's terrible for the environment. It's terrible. Like, stop. Just stop.
Honestly, full stop, we should be working our way towards nuclear. But as we've said on the show many times before, nuclear has a bad PR problem. So I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, let's move to why you're in the running then. We saw the letter. Everyone read the letter. It was kind of a bombshell that broke as we were on air here, about a month or so ago here. Your split from Justin Trudeau came as a shock to so many people because, I did a Google image search of you over the weekend, and in so many pictures, you're side by side with Justin Trudeau. Can you explain a little more of your case as to why you decided now was no longer the time to sort of support him or sort of be in his cabinet, as it were?
Yeah, for sure. And like you started the question, Nick, saying, why am I in the running? And I'm in the running really because we need to stand up to Donald Trump, and I am the person who can do it. I know how to fight for Canada. I know we need to fight for Canada. I have a plan to fight for Canada, and that's what we need right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if it hasn't become obvious before, it should be obvious now. The Liberals are trying to make this not a carbon tax election, as Pierre Poilievre has been talking about for the last 2 years. They are trying to make this election about one thing and one thing only, and that's dealing with Donald Trump for the next 4 years.
Right, because then they can turn around and go, oh, Pierre Poilievre's exactly like him. Do you want to elect that guy up here?
Well, and that's going to be most likely their main talking point against Pierre Poilievre when the general election comes around. So this is what you're going to hear most likely from all the candidates. You're going to hear this over and over and over again, especially by the mainstream media, because that's the Liberal talking point. And you're going to hear it after the Liberal election is completed, a new leader selected, and we move into a general election.
Well, and when you do hear this, because you'll start hearing it in the media, and then you'll start hearing your friends and family say it, he's just like Trump. Just ask them, how is he just like Trump? Explain to me what personality traits you think that they have that are similar. And that person's going to look at you like you've got 3 heads, because they're not going to have any idea how to answer that, because there's no answer that they've been given. It's just a talking point.
You know what? Something just clicked. You know who is most just like Trump, everyone?
Trump?
Mark Carney. Why? Because Mark Carney has never been in politics. Mark Carney has been a lifelong businessman. Mark Carney doesn't have any experience on the international stage. Like this. That's more like Donald Trump than Pierre Poilievre, in my opinion.
That's a really good point.
So,
like a really good point.
So who's most like Donald Trump here, folks?
But of course, your close association with the Prime Minister, you know, a lot of people, it's hard not to know. I mean, it was like kind of hard to separate you. Even as he was talking, he talked about how you were side by side with him here. How will you distinguish yourself from the Prime Minister's record in this race? Because so many people, again, Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, you're very closely linked.
You know, Nick, for me, this campaign has been a real liberation. It is great to be able to say exactly what I think, to speak as a leader, and to speak in my own voice. I am loving it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I did resign from the cabinet. I was disagreeing with the Prime Minister more and more. I realized we were, as a government, on the wrong path. I knew Inauguration Day was coming. See all your coverage. Canadians know this is the central issue. I knew that that had to be what our government was focused on. We couldn't afford to throw away $6 billion. We needed to keep our firepower dry. And today we need to look to the future. And we need to say, you know, as Bill said, we love our country. We are tough. We can get through this. I have a plan to do that. And crucially, I have the guts and the experience to deliver on that plan for Canadians.
She thought $6 billion was too much to throw away. Meanwhile, she refused to give the fall economic update, which was $62 billion in the hole, a full 50% more than her quote-unquote guardrail.
Yeah, well, I guess 22 billion over is okay, but that extra 6 billion, that's just stepping over the line, folks.
Like, this is ridiculous. This is how little these Liberals respect our tax dollars.
Yeah, it's not that they don't respect them. I would say they disrespect the tax.
It's not neutral. It's full disrespect.
Yeah. But notice how she just she doesn't want to say Trudeau's name, doesn't even want to acknowledge he exists. It's like there's this mythical guy that is the current prime minister and was her former boss, and she just doesn't want to even acknowledge it.
It's because she doesn't want to remind Canadians, even subconsciously, that, yeah, Trudeau was prime minister, and I supported him the entire time. I was his deputy prime minister. I was his second in command. I let this happen to our country.
Oh yeah, for sure. And she does the subconscious misogyny accusation against Trudeau, saying, well, I'm my own voice now.
Give me a break. You could have been your own voice before, and you were completely content to go along with all of this destruction that caused Canadians to lose their homes, lose friends and family members, and dividing us. And it's just, you could have put your foot down at any time, and you didn't.
Yep. And why did she when she did? Self-preservation, no other reason.
That's why all of them did.
Let's go back to the disagreement you're having with the Prime Minister, because let's say you win this race. Of course, there's several people in the race right now. If there was a disagreement in your cabinet, how would you handle things differently? Like if your Finance Minister came to you and said, Prime Minister, I think we're on the wrong track here. How would you tackle that differently than what the experience you've had was?
Well, probably I wouldn't tell my Finance Minister I was going to fire her the day after she delivered the fall economic statement. I probably wouldn't say that 3 days before she was supposed to deliver it.
Okay, so in this regard, you can't fault Freeland here. That was the dumbest move that Trudeau could have done.
That is stupid. Especially, you've been in large corporations where they have somebody who's in an integral position and they're going to relieve that person of their duties. They don't be like, hey, Bob, we're going to say goodbye to you in 3 days after you do this major thing for the company. No, they say, hey, Bob, come to HR with us right now. And then they shut everything off while he's in HR and they walk him out.
Well, and I've had that happen one time. I had two major projects that were delivered very successfully, and shortly after that, that's what happened. And did it suck? Yeah, but you know, that's business. But to the point, they didn't tell me a month prior, hey, by the way, you're going to be laid off in about a month. So if you could just finish up those projects as soon as you can, that would be great. No, you don't do that. So at least Freeland has some sense when she's saying this. Like, and notice her whole tone changed when she's actually being honest, and when she's just speaking from her true self. It's a very different tone. So she was actually telling the truth there, and everyone agrees with her. I agree with her. Like, hello, Trudeau, you don't do that.
Yeah, that was a really dumb move on his part. Again, showing that he has no respect for his female ministers. But I think for her quitting, it was, well, I'm going to quit before you can fire me. And now she's gunning for his job. So I guess we'll see.
Interesting note there.
Step one,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, step one, yeah. Okay, but okay, let's talk about the carbon tax. That is sort of the signature policy of the Trudeau government here. You have said no more carbon tax. Why no more carbon tax?
No more consumer-facing
Consumer carbon tax, pardon me. Yes, yeah.
You know why? Because that's what the people are saying to us. And democracy is about listening to people. It is not about saying, dear Canadians, dear people of Ontario, you are so wrong. To be a good leader, you have to listen to people. And that's what we've heard from the people of Ontario.
Like you've been doing for the past 9 years?
Yeah. We played the Mark Holland clip in the other video that we dropped, where he's essentially saying that, you know, if you want to take your kids on long road trips, you're letting the planet burn. So everyone that thinks that the carbon tax actually doesn't put more money back in our pockets, you're all delusional and you're all wrong and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, all of these ministers, this is Trudeau's inner circle, and they've gone along with this the entire time. And now all of a sudden that he's left as leader, he's the interim leader right now, they're saying, oh, well, we didn't want to go along with that. You know, we got to listen to Canadians and what Canadians want. Again, it's self-preservation. You guys could have stopped this at any time, and you didn't. You went along with it the full time. And it seemed like you guys were gung-ho and ready to support it. So the fact that you're saying now, oh, well, we need to listen because it's not what the people want, that's not going to cut it.
Well, and Freeland's not done.
On the other hand, though, when you were asked about it, when you were in the government, you would sort of highlight the fact that I think the number was about 80% of Canadians were kind of getting more back than they were paying on the carbon tax. So if you get rid of the consumer-facing carbon tax, are you not taking money out of people's pockets in a time when there's an affordability crisis?
Great question.
Really good question, because this is exactly what the Liberals have been saying in response to the Conservatives wanting to get rid of the carbon tax for the past year. They've been saying, oh, well, if the Conservatives get rid of that, they're taking money out of Canada's pockets, and that's money that you need, and why would they do that during an affordability crisis? So I absolutely love that the host threw that back at them in a very casual way. Like, okay, so you've been kind of saying this for the last year. There's an affordability crisis, remember? Why are you going to take all this money out of their pockets if it's such a great thing?
Because it's not.
When you're in a government, you play with the team. All of us have the experience of having a boss and having a team. With the price on pollution, with the carbon tax, I think the people have been really, really clear. People just don't like that, and they're saying that to us. I really think that if you're in a democracy and you're not listening to people and you're lecturing them, that is not going to work. And so that is a really important change I think we need to make. And we need to make it because I know that people in Ontario, people in Toronto, they do know that we have to fight climate change. Mm-hmm. But they're saying this element of the plan we just don't like. I've heard them, and I'm going to do what they want us to do.
Okay.
This is such garbage.
Well, let's start with the first bit of that answer. When you're in government, you have to basically play with the team. You have to essentially shut up and say what they're saying, no matter if it's true or not. That's what you have to do. That's basically what she's saying, folks.
It can be true because we've talked about this before, that there are different types of votes. There's first line whip, which anybody can vote however they want. And by however they want, it should be in line with their constituents. The second line whip is that the cabinet ministers, the prime minister, and the parliamentary secretaries all vote in a particular way, usually the way that the leader wants them to vote, and everybody else can vote how they want. And the third line whip is how everybody has to vote the way that the party leader wants them to vote. So to a degree, yes, it is a team sport. She is correct that you have to kind of do what the boss wants in certain situations.
But in this case, she's essentially saying that, well, we were all just saying that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back from the carbon tax because that's what we decided as a team to stick with. That was the narrative that we went with, and we weren't going to move off of that. Now that I'm the new leader, we've changed. And she even says this, like, I can't believe how dumb she is. Well, you know, it has to change, that we need to stop lecturing Canadians. Like, how is this an epiphany for a Democratic Party? Maybe we should actually start listening to the people that put us in these chairs in the first place. And the problem is, you know what? Canadians don't believe you've had that epiphany.
No.
They really, really don't.
Some might, but by and large, Canadians don't believe you.
So you are essentially saying for over a year, you've been lying your collective butts off on the carbon tax. And now because it's politically inconvenient for you, you've said, oh, well, you know what? We know that all the Canadians are going to be for the Conservatives, so we're just going to say we're going to scrap that tax as well, even though they fought tooth and nail for over 2 years on it.
Well, and how do we know that that's actually going to happen? How do we know that if the Liberals get elected again, they will eliminate the consumer carbon tax?
Right? And that's the problem. That's the problem.
I mean, they've been telling us how wonderful it is for the past 9 years. So, how can we trust them? And the answer is that we can't. The answer is that the Conservatives have promised to scrap all carbon taxes. That's the consumer, that's the industrial, all of it. And the Liberals are now only coming around saying, oh, well, maybe we'll scrap the consumer carbon tax because, you know, Canadians don't like it. What about the industry carbon tax? That costs us money too.
Well, and I hate to bring up this analogy, but it's actually important because Canadians have been traumatized mentally under this government. This is exactly like that abusive partner that you've had that keeps abusing, and, you know, you finally kick them out, right? You finally kicked them out, and then they come back 2 days later and they're knocking on the door. I've changed. Believe me, I've changed. And what's the right thing to do? You shut the door in their face and you go tell them to pound sand.